generated this little subtle spin in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. That then drifted its way towards our area. Honestly, most of it was sub-severe. But this is closer to the low, and you can get just a little bit of rotation in that wind energy. What you will notice is in the rest of the line here right now, lightning's obviously a big story, 321 lightning strikes over the last hour, but the only part that's severe within our whole viewing area is the one tornado-warned storm. Rick, what's interesting to note on a scenario like this is what happens when you get a tornado warning in an atmosphere that's not necessarily incredibly favorable. We normally see what's issued are the shorter fuse warnings. This one was anything but. This was a 30-minute, actually almost 40-minute warning per the National Weather Service. And again, there's now discussion going on within the National Weather Service chat about people trying to understand what the actual observed tornado was. It appears that the spotter was probably a couple of miles away from the storm. Rick, you know, I've been storm chasing since I think 1996, so going on 22 years. And I can tell you, having chased out there a number of times and being on storms, and you've worked with me a long time assessing, analyzing storms. And you know, when you're a distance away, it's hard.
Anything can obscure your view.
And a lot of things can look like they're coming towards the ground. And so this is hard. It's hard to spot what's the difference between a lowering in a thunderstorm or what is actually a tornado when it's daytime and when you're, you know, a mile away. When you're several miles away and you're in the nighttime, it can be hard. And you know, looking at a scenario like this, we've got a tornado observed and we need to take it very seriously. At the same time, when these are at night, it's hard to tell what's going on. If you're in Campbell right now or Brewersville in Jennings County, tornado warning, and take your tornado safety precautions. There's no reason to play around.
I 100% agree with you. There's no reason to chance this, to second guess it. Go ahead and get to that safe room that you've designated for your house. Hopefully you and your family kind of have a spot where you all tend to meet up and tend to go. Like we said, Mark, this is observed. Things can obscure the view. It was seen from a distance. And also something to point out, it could also be scud if at this point in time, which is kind of just a little chunk of a cloud which lowers, which oftentimes is mistaken for a tornado. And we've actually seen quite a few shove clouds across the area so far, not just today, but during the week. And that's something that can also fool you and deceive you. Look like a tornado, but it's not.
I mean, it's hard. All we can do is take this as we have a tornado observed. We can take this as we look over at Storm View 3D. We can take this as there's subtle rotation in there. I sit near the Butlersville area. I want to go back. Okay, so the report was actually out of Butlersville. So you can see there's Butlersville to the northeast of North Vernon. I know that the rotation was about 4 miles off to the north of Butlersville when the tornado warning was issued. It has kind of hovered in that general vicinity as the storm's motion is almost stationary. It's not moving much at all. But again, this is clearly in parts of rural Jennings County, so it can be difficult to see exactly what we're talking about here. What we know is we got a report in the Butlersville area. So again, if your distance is out of Butlersville, you're talking about this location generally in here, which is about 2 or 3 miles to the northeast of Butlersville. Very difficult in a daytime scenario to know exactly what you're looking at. It's quite frankly even more difficult as you go into the nighttime hours. I just want to quickly look at our correlation coefficient. Again, I see nothing in there that overly concerns me. Storm right now sitting near the Butlersville area. There's probably torrential rain occurring right now. If you're in the Butlersville area, take the tornado warning seriously. You need to be interior room. You need to be away from windows. You want to get the center part of the house. And if you have a lower floor like a basement, that's the safest spot to go. Rick, tour around the areas we look right now. That's really the only game in town.
Honestly, just to mention, there are other threats with this storm. It's not just the fact this thing could be producing a tornado. There's also some hail with this storm, some gustier winds. You can see the lightning. It's an electric show up there. Vivid with over hundreds of strikes just within this corridor of storms between Columbus, Seymour, North Vernon, and Sand Creek. This one kind of slowly sliding off to the north and east, so it's going to take some time in order for this one to get out of there. But there is that little hail core just to the north of North Vernon. You can see it's moving across the 50 corridor. It will continue its journey north and east, but it could be some, let's say, quarter-size hail potentially. With that one, obviously, the top of the list, the main threat, the main concern is for the possibility for that tornado. Just alone, looking at the lightning, look at all those little white squiggles. Each and every one of those is a lightning strike. There's a ton of them out there. So your house probably rattling and shaking quite a bit with the thunder and lightning we have ongoing. The rainfall intense, probably about 3 to 4 inches coming down per hour. And specifically speaking to the rotation, you look for those greens and those reds knocked up right against each other. And it doesn't look all that impressive, but still enough rotation, enough subtle spin in the atmosphere that it does warrant that tornado warning. Again, Jennings County until 10:15, another 8 minutes or so until this warning should be allowed to expire. If it does, if the National Weather Service continues to hold it, I would say it would have to press it a little further north and probably out of the county, although the northern edge of it's still watching carefully. You can kind of see it is slowly sliding north and east, but taking its sweet time doing so. There are more thunderstorms across the area. I know if you live in Louisville, you're probably saying, well, what's going to happen here in the city? Honestly, the rest of Kentuckiana, at least, let's say 2/3 of it, has already seen a ton of rain today, which means the instability of the fuel has been knocked down. It's at a very low level. The only exception is down here across southern Kentucky. You can see that's where those thunderstorms are thriving, in an area that has not seen much in terms of rainfall so far today. Between that batch of storms and this one, you're pretty much safe from the possibility of any severe weather. But if you're in the extreme northern part of the area of Indiana, extreme southern part of the area down across Kentucky, you have to be on guard for a strong to possibly severe storm. Obviously, right now, tornado warning to our north, down in the south. Nothing is severe. Rainfall continues from Springfield through Lebanon, along 68 into Gravel Switch. Get ready. You can probably see those storms coming in from the distance and hear them as well. Magnolia, you see a burst of some very heavy rain. Thunderstorms sliding off to the east will be in Rio in 11 minutes, Hardeeville 20 minutes, Summersville 34, and it does look like as this tracks off to the east, areas let's say across Kane Valley, Clementsville, will get some of that rain and some of that thunderstorm action, something you haven't seen much of so far today. As a whole, Kentuckiana has 2 spots we're watching very carefully, to the south and to the north. But Mark, obviously to the north, where we have our greatest concern, where we put most of our attention due to that tornado warning.
And for what it's worth now, to add into the mix of problems for Jennings County, now you just were added into a flash flood warning here. And that kind of makes sense, considering that the storm's motion is virtually non-existent. Northern part of Jennings County, flash flood warning here is in effect. Flash flood warning goes till 1:15 a.m. Difficult to see. From what it's from the National Weather Service, we've been chatting with them. Here's what they said, because we're trying to inquire in terms of what the actual report was. What the Weather Service is saying, they did not get any details, and the report was relayed to them from the public. It was to the Jennings 911 Center, and they first received the report from the National Weather Service in Cincinnati, relaying the law enforcement report. Clearly, the story is now we're starting to understand a little bit more. It appears, as it stands now, that it was a public report of a tornado. All I mention is because, you know, we're trained as meteorologists, and as a storm chaser out there, I can tell you it can be complicated looking at and knowing exactly what you're looking at. And then if it's the National Weather Service, and let's say they have an employee out there, that's different. If the law enforcement specifically has seen it, we know that the law enforcement is trained. If it's the public that has seen it and then reported it to law enforcement, we know that sometimes things can appear to be tornadoes. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Overall, what we know now, it appears, is that the public reported a tornado to the 911 center in Jennings County, who relayed that report to the National Weather Service in Indy, who then relayed that report to the National Weather from Cincinnati over to Indy. It doesn't appear that this is necessarily now a law enforcement report of a tornado. It looks like this was a call in from the public of what appeared to be a tornado. Only reason I mention this is not because you don't want to take this seriously, but we just need to assess what we're looking at and assess the threat. And I think if you're in Campbell, you have to take the tornado warning very seriously. Looking at radar in terms of rotation, all we try to do is analyze what we're seeing. And Rick, what I see in Butlerville right now is not traditionally a signal that shows me or screams to me that there is a tornado touching down in this area. Whether one occurred or not, it's going to be difficult to say. But again, now 30 minutes after this initial observed tornado was reported, we at least have more information on what occurred here. My sense, what I'm looking at, is I would be surprised if a tornado warning is continued. I just don't see that rotation within there that speaks to me there is a tornado occurring on this.
It almost looks more like a downdraft, where we have kind of the winds coming down out of that thunderstorm in a couple different directions as opposed to spinning around, which could lead to some straight line wind damage. So nonetheless, whether you have a tornado warning, severe thunderstorm, you got to treat them both the same and get away from windows, get inside your house as low as you can. If you have a basement, that's the best place. But if not, just find that center room that has no windows and the most walls between you and the outside. Mark, I want to go back over to Storm View HD and just look at the rainfall totals.
And for what it's worth, by the way, I'm just communicating with the National Weather Service to see what their sense is. Lindsay and Joel, just an FYI, we've got 2 more minutes on the warning. If the warning is allowed to expire, we'll come back over to you guys and we'll give you all the news here. Obviously, we have no desire here to keep longer than we have to. We're trying to assess what the National Weather Service is going to do with this warning. Rick, you're looking at rainfall amounts in there because we don't want to de-emphasize what's going on here. This is also a concern for flooding, and the rain rates are obscene.
Yeah, 4 to 5 inches per hour, and that's crazy amounts, insane rain, which is why it's not just tornado threat, it's also the possibility for some flash flooding. There is a flash flood warning now up in Jennings County, a large chunk of it until 1:15 a.m. You've seen some rain. It's coming down extremely heavy in buckets right now on top of you, and that storm is hardly moving, which is why I would say it's not a singular threat. Dual threat with this one. In fact, even a triple threat with the fact that we have a lot of lightning in the area as well. But rainfall rates, as we mentioned, 4 to 5 inches per hour, and it's just not moving. It's sitting right north of the 50 corridor.
And you know, you can see, I'll show you those rain rates here. I mean, it's basically just stayed. Anywhere you see the purple is the torrential stuff. And when that storm formed, I mean, we have seen obscene amounts of rain just continuing to fall over that same area. So the problem here is that flooding is a risk as well. Trying to find out from the National Weather Service, look, it's 10:14:57. We know that the tornado warning is posted until 10:15. Okay, the National Weather Service, it appears, have indeed allowed the tornado warning to expire. Again, we're having trouble getting a lot of communication back from them in terms of what they're thinking. But I can tell you as of 10:15, the tornado warning has been allowed to expire. Rick and I are going to continue to watch these storms very, very closely here as we go through the evening. More thunderstorm risks tomorrow. We'll dive much more into that. First, Joel and Lindsay get caught up on the news of the evening.
Sounds good, Mark. As you continue to cover severe weather tonight, we do want to get to some other news of the evening, and we start with a deadly accident claims the life of a Louisville teen and is seriously injured.